Let's get started in our community roundup. Welcome everybody. Welcome all fractionals. Glad you're here. As always, we welcome and support you wherever you are on your fractional journey and whatever you do, whether that's sales, marketing, IT, research, whatever that is. We're here to support you, and that's what this is all about. So welcome. I was going to say you'll notice we switched our format to YouTube, but maybe we did, maybe we didn't. We're playing with YouTube. We'll leave it there. Anyway, we're also changing a little bit in our format in that we got so many people. We're going to get to our guest a little bit here, but we got so many people who want to share either their fractional story or what they do in the fractional space. As we all know, fractional continues to grow, continues to get more interesting, continues to have more players in it, which means more technology, more resources, and all of that. And Jason and I have had a lot of people say, hey, can we come in and be in your community roundup? Can we come in and talk and share what we know with the people in your wonderful community? And that's, obviously, if we think it can help our members like this, then the answer is absolutely yes. So that is a little bit of a segue for our guest today. So our guest today, and hopefully I say this right, is Nicole Adelino.
Nailed
Did I
it.
get it right? Okay.
Yep.
And Nicole is with Upwork, and I believe you're out of the Chicago office, if I have that correct.
I am. We are headquartered in San Francisco, but our sales org is in our Chicago office.
Ah, see, they wanted it to be a little colder. The mind's a little sharper with the wind. I see that. That makes a lot of sense. So out of Chicago, and really exciting because Upwork has I'm a big fan. Early in the talent world in a different way, which every 6 minutes the talent world changes in a different way if you just wait around long enough.
Yeah,
that's what happens. So Nicole, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to meet everyone and learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing in the fractional world, and tell you a little bit about what I'm seeing from the enterprise side, like organizations, and what are their strategies and businesses look like, and how are they more and more now than ever tapping into that kind of fractionalized model.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into all that today. So put your ears on and let's get at it. Nicole, I got a lot of questions, and the team and the group are all going to have questions for you as well. And so I got a ton of questions for you. So let's just get started, and let's kind of start with the basics. Nicole, what do you do with Upwork, and what are you focused on, and how do you help Upwork advance towards its mission?
Sure. So I'll give you kind of a quick overview in case anyone is not familiar with Upwork. We're the world's largest workforce marketplace. We started as Elance and Odesk over 20 years ago, merged into Upwork in 2015, went public in 2018. We have over 22 million independent professionals on our platform, and we work with over 50% of the Fortune 500. So my focus is really new business. So I work primarily in like our channel space. So with private equity and venture capital backed organizations, I am getting them on our platform to leverage our enterprise offering. And it's a little bit different than a lot of people, I think put Upwork in a box where they're like, oh, I can go to get a logo made, or I
want to talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
We kind of do like a total talent solution for our organizations a lot more strategically. So everything from that gig work, which is only about 15% of what our enterprise clients use us for, to the SOW project-based work, all the way to fractionalizing an interim C-suite, and everything in between. And we find more times than ever before in those fast growing organizations and the private equity space, they need those seasoned leaders to come in and help with process organization, oftentimes for an interim basis.
Oh my God. We've got an entire room and hundreds more of seasoned people. I mean, just look around, right? I will be the first to say, look at all the gray hair right here. We got a big crowd. Those are our people. And so, I want to back up a little bit because I knew a little bit of the origin story about Upwork, but because it started where it did, or at least got sort of to scale and market where it did, I think a lot of people think about it as a place to get a logo made, or a place to put myself out there as a creative person, or maybe a marketing strategist, but probably not. I think people think it's, quite honestly, I've heard a lot of people say, that's where they farm out a lot of overseas talent in creative design. And I know that's wrong, but early perceptions are usually real. So could you tell me how wrong I am,
Yeah.
and kind of tell us, what is the Upwork orbit right now as it relates to talent?
Totally. So there was over 10,000 skill sets on our platform. So
Holy crap.
anything
Now?
that anything that you can do behind a computer, we have connected talent and organizations with. So our three biggest categories, I would say, you're right. Marketing obviously is a very intuitive first
Yep.
kind of stepping
Hmm.
stone for freelance
Hmm.
work and
Hmm.
fractionalized remote work, right?
Hmm.
Customer support, go to market. And then
Hmm.
our biggest and biggest growing category is the tech category. So that
Really?
is product engineering, data science, innovation, all of those things. And
IT?
yes, IT, networking, software, anything from a full stack engineer to QA to UI, UX, all of it. And then another growing category is this operational. So I've been working with
Ah.
a lot of COOs who have a lot of vision into how the company needs to process
Mhm.
organization, but they don't always have the resources in place to create that roadmap and get them to where they need to be. So
For
they tap
sure.
into resources. Really, what we kind of get them to think about is, oftentimes companies think, I need to have enough pain to generate enough need to have a full-time role, right?
Yeah.
We want to
Yep.
get ahead of that, get upstream of that. And
Mhm.
before you have that pain, have talented subject matter experts on a bench for you to tap into so that you never feel the pain and you get ahead of those things.
And there's
That's kind of the
25 of those.
strategy we use.
There's 25 of those people listening to you right now. So that's really good. Good that you say that. And I did want to. There are creative people here. There's amazing creative people here, and there's marketers here. But there's a lot of ops people here. There's a lot of EOS people here. And what about? Could you talk a little bit about maybe sales, where that fits into Upwork? And because I hear, I know Bruce's ears and Roger's ears and Tammy's ears, these are all ops people. So I'm sure their ears are ringing a little bit, but we got a lot of salespeople in this world too. So I'd love to hear where Upwork kind of works in that space.
Yeah. Well, as you know, in organizations, the people that have the most revenue are generally the sales org or your
Yeah.
marketing org, right? So
Yeah.
sales is like, fully within the go-to-market strategy, from anything from top of funnel support to operational support. Oftentimes I see operational sales support as a huge category that people need to plug in people that have experience with integration, Salesforce, like a lot of Salesforce native language speakers to be able to build out processes for these growth companies that don't have the operational backbone. So they need to have experts come in and kind of help them put together strategy,
Mhm.
supplement their teams, and then also, be the subject matter experts that are actually the doers. So kind of those three layers within sales orgs.
That's huge. And I know you don't know our community yet, but I think you've talked to almost everybody on this call. Everybody plays in those spaces, but everybody does come to it, Nicole. It's interesting. As I said, this is as you and I talked before the show, this is the part of the emerging economy that if the last 75 years has been, we're going to grind our way there, which has led us to corporate exodus and the great resignation and working too hard. And in this population, you can see there's a crap ton of experience here, right? But I think the next 75 is we're going to think our way there. And
Mhm.
that's where seasoned, practiced, people who have failed and learned are going to come into play. What are you seeing when you're when Upwork is talking to enterprises? Are they having gaps like we need talent, but it can't be the young grinders. We need the brains. We need the gray hair. What do you see happening there when you talk to the market?
Yeah, I think that it runs the gamut, but
Okay.
the talent that's hardest to find for them is the seasoned talent that wants to step in um, on a fractional basis.
Mhm.
Because I mean, there is like even me, I'm an elder millennial, but like my work
I
ethic
haven't heard that term yet.
is a lot different than the kids. Like there's so much more flexibility in the way that we have entered the workplace, especially since COVID. So like people aren't even entering it full time anymore now.
Yeah.
And the people that have all this experience oftentimes shy away from the marketplaces that actually will give them access to those organizations, and they're only leveraging their network. So and your network only gets you so far. And so that's what we hear from these organizations is, we know what we need in talent, we know what we want, but we just can't find the right talent because our network is not as extensive enough. And oftentimes they want like thought leadership, or they want something on like an interim basis, as opposed to, we need to hire a CFO. We need a VP of finance that's going to step in, help create kind of a structure, and then allow us to find the right person long-term. So that's some things I hear often.
You do, yeah. And if it even goes to long term, as we all know, the dynamic is changing. Some people are starting fractional, staying that way because it really works out.
It's a cost management thing for a lot of these companies too, because when you tap into fractionalized talent, it is just inherently less expensive because you're paying for what you get. You're paying for the outcomes, as opposed to paying to have someone on a bench all the time, paying them like round the clock. You're paying for what you got. So one of the things we see often is this like milestone based work, as opposed to hourly work, where it's like, we have a project, we want defined deliverables, whether it's on the tech space, in the sales and marketing, in organizational support. And this is the budget we have for it. So then they're taking on these like projects that are more cost effective for the organization, because it's easier to budget, and they can get subject matter experts in those seats, as opposed to trying to find the purple squirrel that fits all of the needs that they have.
Which doesn't exist. I know it's this group, we talk about that a lot, Nicole, is we've all gone through the cycle over the last few years of choosing to be independent, but still looking at jobs, right? And looking at these job roles that are posted. It's like, you want what? You want a seasoned person who's worked in sales for 900 years, but they all that experience, but at a college level pay rate.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're also going to do the marketing and a little bit of the finance. So it's a little insane right now if you think about how the need and the supply and demand are connecting, and it makes sense that they're not, which is what I love about what Upwork is doing. And that's actually the next thing I was going to ask you about. Is we're going to get into all these subjects. At Upwork, you guys just launched, I think, one of the most brilliant campaigns. The way we work now.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, if everybody, all of you members, if you follow me, I've posted it, it's out there. It's wonderful for two reasons. You feature a corpse that is representing the old way of working. He's dead and he sings as a creative. I love that. It's brilliant all the way around.
What's not to love, right?
What's not to love? Exactly. What's not to love? But behind that is strategy. I am a fan of it, and I know that Upwork, just the broad stroke there, right, is saying it's different now.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit?
Literally,
it's dead, and we're sort of in between these two places. And I think we're all very familiar with, we've great resignated, we've quiet quitted and continue to do so, the exodus. But running from something is one thing, and it's legitimate and needed, and there's reason and we're still trying to figure out what I'm running to, and that's what Voyager's for. But I'm talk a little bit about, okay, what does Upwork see there? Where do you see people going? Where is that? If the old ways are dead, what are we moving into? What's the strategy behind that? What's the strategy behind the dead guy?
Yeah, so I think oftentimes we have this visual of like what companies traditional work models look like, and it's like two circles in a circle, and the big circle is like your FTE, and that little fractional part on the outside of the circle is your fractional, or we call it digitalizing your workforce, right?
Okay.
Everything is a digitalization. This is kind of the workforce's iteration of that, right? It's no different than when AWS came on the scene and everyone was like, you got to move to the cloud, and everyone's like, move to the cloud. It's crazy. We're not going to do that. We don't have security. Like, what's the cloud? And now it's like your company can't exist unless you are on the cloud. And it's the same with the talent market. We want to shrink that full-time, make it look more like an olive as opposed to like a huge scoop of ice cream in a bowl, right? And so that you are you're maximizing your talent, you're maximizing your innovation, your diversification of thought, and you're maximizing cost management, because it is less expensive pound for pound to get the right person with the right skill set in the role independently than it is to try to source someone full-time for a generalist role, right? So
Yeah.
what we are telling these organizations and what we're hearing from them is they are going to hire for people for their core competencies internally as full-time employees, because we're always going to need full-time employees, right? And
Yeah.
then leverage subject matter experts and people of thought leadership to fill in those gaps and offer diversification of thought and really innovation to help bring them into that kind of next version of how the workforce works.
Scale of 1 to 10. How hard do you think companies see it getting access to those seasoned subject matter experts, whether it's in finance, ops, IT? Where do you think we are there?
Well, unless they're working with Upwork, it's tough. No, I mean, oftentimes they go to the big four, they're going to like the consultancy agencies and stuff like that, that traditional method or traditional staffing to try to find these key players, right? And we all know how much they're marking that up, 75 to 100%. And so it's not, the money's not going directly to the person, and you have no idea what the markup is on all of that either. That market is very saturated, so it's very competitive, so it is tough, and the consultancies have like the power leverage, whereas if you can tap into independent talent who is working the way they're choosing to be working, in a marketplace where you have the speed to capture them, because I think that that's like the benefit that Upwork brings is we have 22 million individuals, so typically we can connect you with the right people in like 3 business days as opposed to 30, not 60, 90 business days. So that's the other advantage, I think.
Got it. So let's, I want to kind of go in tight to Upwork and then I kind of come back out to the market for a second, but let's go into tight to Upwork right now. So here's a room full of seasoned experts, fractional, independent people you're looking at right now, listening on the recorded thing, some here on the YouTube. What's the best way? What would you advise this group of smart people? Like, here's how you guys should engage with Upwork. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, first is get a profile. You guys have extensive resumes, I'm sure, and tons of content in your portfolios. Create a profile. And really, it's like that is your advertisement, right? From there, there's a ton of tools within Upwork that really help our freelance community as well. So you can see, like, you can search by projects. So some of these organizations are pushing out their needs publicly and saying like, this is the type of person I have. And you can search by those skill sets, project names, kind of what you want to do, get an idea of what's out there. And then you propose your solution. And basically it's, it is a competitive marketplace, but as you start to build up your usage, you get job success scores. So as your success score gets higher on Upwork, you are more likely to work and engage with like higher enterprise clients. So I think the first thing is getting started, getting, that.
Just like going on LinkedIn and working on your profile there, have an Upwork profile. It is a place to be for talent of all. If you're fractional, it's an important place to be. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I think that ensuring that you do the due diligence, like there's so much information on Upwork. You can go see what like individuals like you have put on their what is on their profiles, so that you know how to create and curate a good profile and then get active. From there, I think it's kind of a snowball effect, because the demand is so high. There's such a need for talent right now. You're definitely bound to find it.
Does that include finance talent as well? I meant to ask that earlier.
Yes, I oftentimes that finance departments are the most strapped, I find, especially the seasonality that comes with finance. So being able to turn that faucet on and off and tap into needs, without boundaries on it, with a little bit more flexibility and agility is really important to those orgs.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that's because I honestly, and I'm probably guilty of not having my aperture open wide enough, but I had those early preconceptions that this is a place for a certain set of the market. But what I'm hearing is Upwork is a place where everybody who's seasoned and everybody who, especially people that like our membership, they've chosen to be fractional. They've taken the training. We're gonna have new seminars coming. They're like, this is the sharpest of the sharp fractional talent you'll find anywhere in the country. They're not going to struggle getting a profile up and things like that. So very, very good to know. Okay, well, I wanted to do that. So if you haven't done it already, let's kind of back out now. So get to Upwork and set your profile, right? So how could you talk a little bit about how does Upwork place, or how does Upwork look at fractional talent? So a fractional chief financial officer. We've got many, right? What does does Upwork say that's awesome? We want it, that is the season stuff separated differently than the overseas stuff, or how does that happen?
Yeah, so we have like a different badging system for our talent. So the top rated talent, or like the most sought after talent, the most seasoned talent, we call expert vetted, and they get an expert vetted badge. And typically they will work directly with our recruiting teams. So like that will be your higher level tech talent oftentimes, but also finance, people that have C-suite experience, because our expert vetted team works directly with our enterprise clients. So the clients are like the highest dollar value, biggest growing organizations. So that's one way that we tap into our internal network. But our expert vetted team is constantly searching through our own platform to identify talent. We're also identifying talent off platform. So there's ways to do that. And I should have brought that information for you guys, but I should see if there's maybe like a way to submit resumes or something to them. I can follow up on that, John. And
we can always have another session like this and fly out shows and things like that. But what I'm hearing is you have the ability, so get on the platform and do your profile, but there's an off-platform way to dig deep into Upwork resources and make those connections between supply and demand. Nicole and I, everybody, will flag that and come back to the community with more solutions there. I know people are going to be interested in that. So talk, if you could, that's so exciting. So enterprise clients, right? So let's talk about that stratification. Talk for a minute about, let's say there's the Fortune 2000 and they need talent. They're hurting, right? And then there's the off Fortune 2000. Two different markets, we can all serve them both. What do you see happening in both of those? Are they all suffering? Does smaller struggle more? What do you see?
It's very interesting. So I kind of separate it like enterprise. So we have like strategic, which is really just like our Fortune 100. And then enterprise is really any organization that has over 250 employees is kind of how we identify it. I work in a separate section, which is our channel, which is companies that are private equity and venture capital backed. Like within our ideal customer profile, essentially. So I think that there's a dynamic between those, if I'm being honest. I think like the more traditional publicly traded companies are kind of tightening up their bootstraps right now, figuring out ways to make themselves leaner, make sure that their cash flows are there. Like they're definitely looking at the economic headwinds and making decisions based on that. Oftentimes those organizations are a little bit more risk averse, right? They have like a steady growth trajectory. So we've been seeing a little bit more on the economic headwinds on that side of the business. Where I live right now on the private equity side, it's actually kind of exciting because oftentimes these are very well-backed organizations, right? With a lot of capital that they've just received, that have value creation plans that they need to put in place to grow and give their investors a return on investment. So they're in a very unique position where like they're leaning into these economic headwinds and they're trying to make innovations while things are crazy. We actually just heard from a organization that we just closed the other day that is very traditional. Ordinarily, they typically 90% to 100% of their employees are full-time. They only have 4% attrition. Like people want to work for this org, and their CPO decided this is the time when we need to double down and be more innovative and think about how we're accessing talent in a different way, and
Mhm.
are now reassessing their strategy because of the potential economic headwinds that we're facing.
Mhm.
Although I did just hear today the Q3 looked up a little bit in the economy, right? So
Yeah, right.
maybe
Yeah.
it's a little chaotic right now, but
Yeah.
so they made the decision to double down and to innovate when times get crazy, so that they could accelerate growth as opposed to buckle down. And we're kind of working through the change management of like, how do you fractionalize these things? How do you tap into resources that are really going to help elevate your internal team members with thought leadership and subject matter experts? So it's
Well,
very interesting, the dynamic we're seeing on both ends of the types of companies.
yeah, and you're doing it right now. This population right here can help you with all of that. Jason and I, maybe just in the absence of anybody else, we're just good at this fractional thing. We know about it, we speak about it, so we can certainly help you with that and plug you into everybody here and others who are members to get better at it. So the next question I had for you is what actually, I want to stay on that smaller size. So what you're saying is investment capital, new venture, that segment is reaching in looking for fractional talent. And would you put those in the everywhere from startup to 50 million? Would you go higher? Like
Some
how
of them
big?
are unicorns, some of them are billion. You know
Okay,
what I mean? It's like we focus primarily on the tech side, like tech enabled and tech organizations.
sure.
Obviously, those organizations are going to be more apt to have roles that can be fractionalized,
Mhm.
or remote for that matter.
Yep.
So yeah, you know, it is interesting. I don't know if there's like a revenue size. I think it's a mindset of the organization.
Sure.
And I find
Yeah.
that high growth organizations tend to be more innovative because they have the runway to do so.
Mhm.
And they also have the capital to do so, which is funny because the companies that need it the most, who could benefit from that cost management, are the ones that end up having to lay off 300 people, when you don't have to do that if your workforce is more flexible and more agile, right?
Totally. I still have a few clients myself as a fractional CMO, and I had a conversation today, and they were telling me they were having a big conversation about their benefits. And I used to own companies and all that, and I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to think about that. And they're like, we're so glad we don't have to have that conversation with you. It's just not in. It's just not in there. So yet another benefit for them. So yeah, I mean, just the math, right, Nicole? There's more small than there are big, and and if they're going to grow, move up and to the right, they're going to need wisdom. And so I always think, whether it's new investment, startup, or just those so many businesses that have said, we gotta do something different. We got to do things a different way. I think we're moving into a big change. So let's talk about that. This is the way we work now. The world's different. It's all different. What are yours or Upwork's predictions for the next year in talent?
Well, everything that we keep seeing statistics wise, whether it's from, SIA or Gardner, is C-suite keeps leaning in further and further to independent talent, just generally.
Mhm.
And they are saying, it's going to be a larger portion of the workforce. It already is.
Yep.
The new people that are entering the workforce are choosing to work that way. And more now, the people that are of retirement age are not wanting to retire or not wanting to kind of get out of things, but they want to kind of shift how they work. And
Mhm.
so once you start getting the shift of the people that traditionally haven't worked that way, that we're at like kind of the tipping point. So we only
Mhm.
see it kind of accelerating through the next probably 3 to 5 years. And we anticipate that the majority of organizations will have a fractionalized strategy or an independent talent or contingent talent strategy built in, or they're not going to survive what the market
Yeah. You painted the picture quite well, I thought. If you think about the circle of talent right now, the
Mhm.
bulk it's if you consider it like it's an olive, and then the fractional is the little, what's the red thing in the middle, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
It's that little pin in there, right? And
Menzo.
but that's
Yeah, that's
growing,
essential,
right?
exactly.
This has to shrink. You have to, well, I shouldn't even say has to. By nature of the way the economy is working right now, the talent force in-house is shrinking. That's where we are. That's why everybody's looking
Yeah.
for it. And it wants to fill back up with talent, but not necessarily full time, which is why, our hundreds of Voyagers and our 30 that are here today and listening, like that's why we're all there. We're all anticipating that. Jason and I, when we started this, we anticipated like it makes so much sense, right? It should start right away. Everybody should do this. It makes perfect sense. But it's a big change. We have been doing captive workforce since the end of World War II.
Yeah.
And so it's beyond, it does go beyond the books, right? And the strategy. It gets into work culture.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, maybe the biggest
Well, I
thing.
think we've been seeing a bigger shift at that CHRO and CPO level where they're
Mhm.
taking initiative to understand, because oftentimes it helps with burnout, like having an agile workforce that can um you know accent your full-time workers
Mhm.
needs and requirements and what your outcomes are decreases burnout. It allows people to feel like they have more control over how they work. And so
Mhm.
it is a cultural thing. And I think sometimes companies are hesitant because they're worried that like if we start getting too many contractors, it's going to change the culture of the organization. And I always say, like, we drink our own champagne at Upwork, and
Yeah.
we have more independent talent than we have full-time talent. Our engineering team is primarily sourced through our own talent platform. Some of
Mhm.
these people have been working for us for 5 to 7 years. So there can be a
Yep.
lot of versions of what fractional looks like too. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's up to Upwork, and I think it's up to Voyager and those of us who pursue it. Like we kind of have to paint that picture so people know what they're running to. I think we're past the arc, right? Like, okay, we know we're getting away from. I heard a great term from one of our new members. They said, "I'm a corporate escapee." And it's great, right? Like all this skill, all this talent, but the insight was it was a man, and he said, "I never want to go back to that again. I learned a ton. I think he's in his 50s, and he goes, I have a ton to offer, but not in the old way, because we can't get to what I'm good at in the old structure. We can't
Yeah.
get to it. When I'm on the outside and I'm free and I'm not in the politics and I'm not on the benefits program, that's when the most value I can bring comes
Yeah.
to the table."
Well, and think about the outcome that you got from someone who is truly doing what they are passionate about and what they're best at, as opposed to constantly working from, their basement. These individuals are working in their ceiling, right? So you're going to
Mhm.
get the highest quality of work.
Yep.
And that is very indicative of our solution too. We see
Mhm.
like the fill rates that we have are 88% compared to traditional staffing, which is more like 45%. It's because you can get better people if you're more flexible with the way that you look at it, right?
Yeah, yeah, we've worked hard on that at Voyager, and I know you do too. Is we really trying to convert the conversation to value-based pricing. I can just pick anybody in the room. I'm going to pick on Alex. Alex can walk into a client, and he comes from marketing, and he can look at a client and go, "Well, here's three things that are a problem," and it might save them $5-10 million, right? Well, that's what hour that you worked on at 100, 200, $300 an hour. Did you figure that out? The value of that's higher. So I hope, and I think we all have to move to a place where value-based pricing, particularly for fractionals, particularly for those of us who are seasoned, where that becomes the norm. And we have the way we structure our supports tools for everybody is our contracts are based on that. I know a lot of people like, I'm going to give you 8 hours. Well, of those 8 hours, where did you solve the $1 million problem? Actually, it's while I was pouring coffee this morning. It took me about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You put your time in the 30 years before you do this fractional stuff.
Yeah. That's interesting because when I talk to very traditional companies, they're always like, well, what's the hourly rate for these people? What's the average hourly rate? I'm like, well, here's the thing. I can tell you what the average hourly rate is, but everything it's a marketplace. So they're going to propose to you the value that they deem that piece of work is. And oftentimes that model, that milestone based model, like I was mentioning before, brings the freelancer, the independent talent, more value, and it brings the organization more value. And it's less nitpicky in the like let me see your work diary. Were you
Oh
working
my
till
God.
7 to 5? Like, I'm bringing you a level of expertise, and really what we're judging is the outcome, not
Yep.
the inputs. If I can get you to the outcome, it shouldn't matter if I could do it in 2 hours because I'm an expert, or
That's right.
someone that can do it, it takes them 40 hours. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think
That's the best manifestation of it. And I think we're getting there. I think we're halfway between. We're just, again, 75 years of hourly based compensation. It's a society and it's a culture. We're moving off of that because we have to, and the value's there. Everybody in the room delivers that kind of value. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, but it happens pretty quickly. I think one of the best manifestations of a fractional professional in any skill set is the ultimate realization from the hiring side. The client says, can you come in here and tell me what to do? That's when we're doing our best. It's not when we go take orders or sort of follow a program. It's we come in and we go, I am seasoned and I know this stuff. I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm going to be nice about it. I'm not going to be a jerk, but here's what's wrong. Here's what needs to be fixed. I'm going to tell you. Want to know why? Because I got 30 years of this behind me. You
yeah.
don't want me to come in here and follow your program. Don't do that. It's not going to help anybody. So that I think that's my prediction for next year is we're going to hit that moment in the fractional talent cycle.
It's funny because I think that companies think of that as losing control a little bit, but
Yep.
in reality, they're gaining control because you're putting your organization in the best position to accelerate to what's next, as opposed
Yep.
to being a roadblock and kind of having that fixed mindset of like, this is the way we need to do things. And I think that
Mhm.
there's an expertise that someone who has worked in that sort of environment and
Mhm.
understands can bring to the table to your internal teams as well. And it is like I said, it offers that diversification of thought and the expertise that you maybe wouldn't get otherwise. And I think that
I
that's
think,
the mind shift that's kind of
yeah, historically that would have been hard. I think, several years ago it would have been hard. Like I got to have control. I got to see butts. I got to sort of call the shots. That again, normal societal work culture, the letting go, the vulnerability, the winners obviously in the economy, they're always doing that. They know that they have to replace themselves quickly. They know they have to listen to people in areas that's how they got good at what they do.
yeah.
But that was pretty rare, right? So, but now that's kind of coming down to, well, every business, you better let go and let, you know, somebody who knows their shit in that category guide it and tell you what to do. There's executive coaches and life coaches. They're working so hard right now. I talk to them a lot. They're like, I'm working with CEOs just on letting go.
Mhm.
And the insight for me has been they want to, they just don't know how. I
Yeah.
mean, they really do. They really do. It's not that they're a bunch of untrusting type A, OCD jerks. They want to let go, but it hasn't been in their thought process when they started the business. So letting go is hard, but they are getting there. And
Yeah. I hear that often, and I totally agree. And I think that oftentimes giving them like a scalable solution that
mhm,
has the checks and balances to ease their mind, so they're not just jumping into
yeah.
this. Kind of where I come in with our enterprise solution. I'm like, we can offer you something where we're taking on a lot of the risk for you, because one of the things we do is actually help them classify individuals, because when you're working with, especially if you're doing interim C-suite, like should this be a payrolling arrangement, or should this really be an independent contractor? And like organizations care then about that side of things too.
mhm,
So having a partner that can come in and bridge that gap
Yep.
has been really helpful to a
Yeah.
lot of these.
Well, feel free to bring anybody here with you on any call you need. But if you need some intelligence in a certain category, boy, this is going fast. We've got 12 minutes left. So I want to make sure I have time. I got a few more things I want to cover. But if anybody has a question for Nicole or just a question for the subject matter, come off mute, fire away. It's just fine if you do. We're going to keep talking. But if you have a question, jump on in, raise your hand or whatever. And I certainly want to get to it. Specifically, if you have a question for Nicole and Upwork and how all of that works. So fire away if you're maybe raise your hand in the little icon thing so I know to call on you when that happens. So, but until then, I don't see any hands quite yet. Could you talk a little bit about? I got a couple more questions here. So, how is Upwork going to solve the I need seasoned people differently than I just need foot soldier talent. How's Upwork coming at that? We come at that from an individual, that's what we do. But how does Upwork, that's like a macro market issue, right? What's Upwork doing there? How is it addressing it?
So I think the first thing that we've been doing a ton more of is like thought leadership in the space. We've been having some of our thought leaders, Tim Sanders, who's our VP of Customer Insights, and we have our VP of HR Customer Insights, Tony Buffum, who actually stood up Upwork programs. So for one, we're getting out there and we're speaking. We're getting in front of executives to explain why this way of working is better. And it's not just for the low level hanging fruit in marketing, it's for every kind of person within your org and every department within your org. There is a fit for all of this. So I think that education process is like the first thing that we're doing, is really opening the eyes and ears to what are the trends in the market, not just how can Upwork do it, but like how can you just do this in general. So that's one thing we're doing often. We're getting out there a lot more. Some of our leaders just did like CXO days for some of the private equity partners, where we're getting in front of groups of C-suite to really explain what kind of this concept is and how it can enable their organizations. And then from there, we're digging in on like the account level. Our account managers are understanding like, what are your business initiatives? What are you driving to in the next 6 months to a year? And where are your gaps? And what do you need? Not just like, what projects do you have coming up? It's let's tie it back to what your business initiatives are, because then that unlocks a lot more strategic needs, which is where we can fill in those more higher level, more expertise, subject matter experts at the more senior level.
Where are they on letting Upwork come in and ask those questions and participate in that? Because that's sometimes tender stuff, right? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What are your sales goals? Where are that doesn't go to just anybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that like I warm them up so much on the front end of the sale that they just are willing to spill their guts. But I think it's a process, and I think it's a partnership. We're not a vendor to a lot of these organizations. We're a partner, and we showcase the value of our partnership through data, and that unlocks a lot of things. If I can show a COO that his operational leader just saved 65% while driving 3 times faster outcomes for a huge operational problem that their sales org had, they're going to want to talk to me about what their other problems are. So I think it's really earning the respect where we help solve their problems, showcase it with data, and then really become a partner to help engage, to be an advisor of where you can plug in more agile talent, as opposed to thinking of things in that more traditional sense.
Is that data and those resources when all of us, if for those of who are like, I'm going to go start an Upwork profile, is that data and those resources available for people to go access and learn about and just help them think about themselves? Where is that in the world?
That's a great question. So a lot of times when we're doing kind of like ROI, we're looking at like MC, so EMSI, their data in terms of like, what are the average rates for these roles? And then we're looking at like, what is our talent actually paying on our platform, or pulling actual talent and showcasing projects that they've done, where it's like, if you hired a full-time person, this would be $145 an hour. You can find this person for $100 an hour on Upwork, and they actually have 6 times much as experience. Here's a review of everything they've done with other organizations. You're getting a lot more transparency. So I think that that's kind of how we leverage the data. Is it always available? Is it publicly available? Some of it, but not all of it. Some of it is.
Well, you'd be amazed what just even a little edge of the tape can do. Just a little bit can do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What I like about Upwork too, it helps us think of ourselves in a Yelp context. We're a product in the market as fractional pros. I'm not saying everybody has to go out and get ratings and treat yourself like a restaurant, but it's a healthy way to think about how you go to market. Is small, snack size, very powerful, focused service and benefit, really anchored around the larger problem solving that we're gonna have to face. Is there anything else in the Upwork profile? Any other hints or tips for this group to go into Upwork, other than just hammering you on LinkedIn and sending you emails and everything, is there anything else that you can advise people to do? Like, do this when you go into Upwork, start that profile. You're all wise and seasoned. Think this way. Is there anything any tips you have for this group?
I'm like a big researcher, so I would say like when you're thinking about what is your role, what would your title be on Upwork, go look at other people's profiles and kind of see like what kind of projects are they doing, because all of that is visible and transparent, so you can get a lot of information of like how are successful people on the platform positioning themselves and who are they working with and what are the names of those types of projects. So then as you're searching our product catalog for those things, you're able to identify where you can jump in and propose solutions to kind of get your toes wet on the platform. But I think that that's where there's a lot of really good information to kind of sort through.
Yeah, good. And I know it's true, but you know, a lot of times people like, well, if I go to Upwork, I don't have my own clients. And I want to be clear to everybody, you can be on Upwork and get work there. You have your own clients already. There is nothing about Upwork that says you're just an Upwork person.
Yeah, and also most of our freelancers have their own businesses. They're, you know, a lot of times they have their own LLC. Sometimes they join as an agency as opposed to an individual. So like it really is you hold the control. You have the ability to say, this is what I want to be paid for this. This is how much my time is worth. You know, that's the beauty of it. We're not telling you what that is. We're just trying to make those connections so that everyone has those economic opportunities.
Well, and they should, right? The world is changing. The dead guy has made his statement. The Upwork dead guy has made it clear that it is changing.
The old way of work is dead, baby.
It's dead. It's dead. That's why we're great resignating. That's why we're quiet quitting and all that sort of stuff. But people do need training. And I mentioned this in a goal. And before we sort of close, you know, we are about to launch a whole educational series on fractional, half-day seminars and things like that. So you know, what we provide the community is online training and things like this and community. But we're gonna go deeper into that because it's going to be 10 or 15 years transition from full-time captured corporate entity person to independent working for myself, my own LLC. We're only at the beginning of that as far as a work culture goes. But we're definitely on our way. Nicole, I hope this has been good for you and fun.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to meet all of you guys. Please.
You know a ton.
Yeah, I try to be an expert. You can't be good at sales if you're not an expert of your craft. You have to be in it. And I think that this just helps me kind of see from the other side of things, like what is important to really the lifeblood of our organization, which is our talent, right? Like, so I appreciate you guys listening to me blabber on for an hour. I hope that you guys all found this productive. I appreciate you having me.
It's very helpful. You know, we all have to learn our way forward into the new normal. We all have to step into new things and work out new muscles. And quite honestly, it's amazing how much we have to forget, isn't it? We have to forget the stuff that doesn't serve us anymore. And that's really, really hard because the stuff that we're trying to forget has been around for a long time. And so those dynamics and all those things. So, well, this is once again, I don't see anybody with any burning questions, so it was just totally fine. We gave people a ton to think about. Nicole, will you come back for another session sometime?
Certainly, I'd be happy to be back. Thank you guys so much.
Love it. I have one more question, and then we'll close it. Okay. Because you sort of touched on it there. Should this group of people go into Upwork also on the I am a provider side? So not talent, but as an agency, as a company, as a finance business, as an ops business. Should they do that?
To find talent?
No, to put themselves. I think you had mentioned you can.
So you are still on the, like, technically you're on like the talent side, but you can sign up as an agency or as an individual.
Okay.
So if you have, you know, like you have a network that like you want to take on projects and then enable your network, that would be like more of the agency play. Okay. Otherwise, you can be an individual with an LLC as well.
Okay, just kind of whatever fits, and they both work. Okay. Gotcha. Super helpful. All of our people are smarter than we were before we began. Thank you very much, Nicole. We really appreciate your time today, and we look forward to having you back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Nicole. Everybody, thanks for tuning in today. It's recorded. It'll get put out there on LinkedIn and in the social channels and everything else. If you have more questions, or if you want to, obviously you know the URL for Upwork, you can take it from there. But if you have more questions or anything else you want to cover, bring them to the community, the LinkedIn community, ask there. Please connect with Nicole. I'm sure she'd love to have more LinkedIn fans and friends. And as always, work with each other. So another good session, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to shut it down for the day, and we'll see you all in a month. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.